muted. Okay, so welcome to the first class of the second the second part of the course of Women in Tanac. And we are starting with a very interesting woman called Tamar. I call her the woman of the Crossroad. The whole story about Tamar is written in chapter 38 of Bereishit, and it's a good idea, recommended to have the Bereishit in front of you, that chapter, because we're gonna, sometimes look inside in the Pesukim and sometimes look inside of the commentary that I gave you on the handout. So the story of Tamar and Tamar with Yehuda is really not very simple, not easy to understand. Tamar is going out to sit at the crossroad where everyone passes by. And not only is she not punished for that, it's like she's dressed up as a harlot, trying to tempt Yehuda. Seems to be a very promiscuous act. But instead of being punished, she actually is rewarded. And Yehuda proclaimed Tamar's righteousness. And in the end, she and Yehuda become the parents of the ultimate Mashiach, the great-great-grandparents of King David, and from him the Mashiach. So we're going to try to shed some light on this enigma. How you say it? Let's see, what do you say, Terry?
Enigma.
Okay, that's what I meant. Thanks. Okay, so first we're going to go into a little bit the name of Tamar. Tamar is her name. So the word Tamar is actually the numerical. Okay, I'm going to get to you a minute, Menucha. You found the icon. Excellent. You're computer savvy. Let me just finish what I was going to start saying, and then I'll have you say your comment. So Tamar is the gematria, is the numerical value of 613 plus the 22 letters of the Torah plus the ending letters. There are 5 of those. So altogether, 613 plus 27 is 640, and that's the numerical value of Tamar. Taf is 400, Mem is 440, and Reish is 200, so 640. So that's why they say in Kabbalah that the Torah is called Tamar. All the mitzvot together with all the letters of the Torah, that is the gematria of Tamar. Something very deep, but let's hear what Menucha has to say. I'm going to unmute you.
You said that that Tamar and Yehuda were actually the great-great-grandparents of Mashiach. So they were the great-great-grandparents of David HaMelech?
Yes.
Okay, so
I mean, it's all the genealogy is written in the end of the book of Ruth, where it goes from Tamar, and then it shows she had Peretz, and Peretz had Chetzron, and Chetzron had Ram, and Ram had Aminadab, and Aminadab had let's see if I remember it exactly, but there's Salma, and then Salma had Boaz, and then Boaz together with Ruth has Yishai, and Yishai has Oved. Has Oved, and Oved has Yishai, and Yishai has David. Okay, I taught Megillat Ruth so many times, so I should know it better than this. It's not exact what I just told you, but it's already.
You did say the great-great-great-grandparents of Mashiach.
Yes, so we know that the Mashiach comes from David. We always say that. Mashiach ben David.
Okay, got it.
Mashiach ben David. Okay, so
Thank you.
Now, Rav Tzadok of Lublin says, what's going on here? There's a story about it. This is like interspersed. This whole story with Yehuda and Tamar is interspersed right after the selling of Joseph into slavery. And so, hold on just one second. So, just I have to just tell someone something. Okay. So it says about Joseph that he was going down. I'm sorry, it says about Yehuda, he's going down. Ve'ared Yehuda. Oh, that's great. We can see you with Esther. Wonderful. That helps me a lot. and Yehuda Esther lives in Israel, in Arad, and she's been a student off and on in our school. Very exciting to see you again here. You look wonderful, all of you do. So Yehuda was going down. This is what it says. It says it a few places in the Torah after the selling of Yosef, because the brothers were upset with Yehuda because he was the leader of the brothers, and he said, okay, you told us not to kill Yosef, instead to sell him, but if we listened to you, but if you had said bring him back to our father, we would have listened to you. So they were upset with Yehuda. And so there was a blemish in Yehuda since the selling of Yosef. And therefore, Yehuda could not just bring about the Mashiach in a straight way, because there's a blemish. It has to come on in a kind of underhanded way, in a kind of like the way of Mashiach being born. When I say Mashiach, I mean the Messianic dynasty couldn't, all the greats, okay, couldn't come. It should have been a wedding, a chuppah, Tamar and Yehuda, they're soulmates, that's already determined by Hashem from before the creation. And here is the wedding, and these are the parents of the forthcoming Mashiach. It should have been that, but it couldn't because of the blemish in Yehuda. And instead, it came about in a convoluted way that through a woman called Tamar, which also means substitution, through a woman that is, she was the way it came about was like a substituted way, in a hidden way and not in the proper way. So it's a concealed and secret way by means of replacement. As we said, Tamar means replacement. Yes, you are unmuted.
I have a question about, so are you saying that the blemish in Yehuda came from the sale of Joseph? Is that what we're...
Yes, because Yehuda was the leader. Okay. And whatever he would have done, the brothers would have listened. Okay. So the brothers were upset with him, that because they saw how much their father suffered from the separation with Yehuda, and everybody felt very guilty. And they thought that, that if Yehuda would have just told him, bring him back to the father, it would have been so much better. They would have listened. So it says he went down from his brother. His brother held him in low esteem now. Like they felt he should have done better. Okay. And so...
Thank you.
But we know it's a principle in the Kabbalah that there's no going down except in order to go up. En yerida el leman aliyah. Rav Kook talks also a lot about that. So he went down in order to later go up, in order to later become the father of the Mashiach. Every descent is for the sake of ascending. However, there was a descent first, and that descent was also through his two sons, the two sons, Er and Onan, who sinned with Tamar. Both of them married Tamar, and both of them died soon after marrying her, one after the other. And it does, and it says in the Torah, because they did evil. Well, it says Er did evil and Onan did evil, that he didn't want to raise children for the deceased brother. And they were wasting their seed to the ground. There's opinions that say that they didn't want to get Tamar pregnant because she was so beautiful. They didn't want to destroy her beautiful figure. So, that is a problem in itself, but we're not going to go deeply into that right now. Just that they did one of the worst sin that there is to do, and they needed to be rectified. And they were actually rectified. This is why Tamar had with Yehuda twins, Zerach and Peretz, to rectify each of her deceased husbands. All this became revealed later, okay, because the story of Yehuda and Tamar is a story of tshuva, of repentance, and just like Yosef himself said, just like Yosef himself said, he was not upset that they sold him. He said, you sold me, maybe you had bad intentions, but Hashem thought it for good. And look what happened. I came here to Egypt in order to be able to sustain you during the famine. And, Yosef understood that the end goal of him being sold as a slave was something good. And the same is in the story of Yehuda and Tamar. And this is a big thing in Chassidut, and even we have a saying like that in English and in Danish too. When the end is good, everything is good. So everything goes according to the end. This is also the story of Ruth, that it started in a bad way with Elimelech and his family leaving the land of Israel and deserting his people in a difficult time. And now, and in the end, though, by going down to Moab, they were able to bring back Ruth. So had they not done that, going down, there would have not been that Ruth that's bringing the Mashiach as well. So all the stories that have to do with bringing Mashiach is about going down in order to come back up. And now I'd like to ask for one of the new people to introduce yourself. Maybe we'll start with Menucha. Just introduce yourself and a little bit your connection to us.
Hi, I'm Menucha ben David. Chana, you remember when I first met you? I think must have been when you came to America.
Yes, you brought me to Sharon.
Right. So it's been a few years, maybe 15 years. I don't know how many years.
It really goes fast.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So that's it. I have 5 children, and three are in Israel now. 7 grandchildren there.
Wow!
God willing, this week my youngest, 23 with Down syndrome, is interviewing with Nefesh B'Nefesh, and please God, she and I will be living in Israel. Please God, by Sukkot.
Wow! So you're making mamash aliyah.
Well, I made it in 1990, but she's Ezra Choser, and because she hasn't been there in 12 years, she's considered an Olah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mazel tov, mazel tov. Okay, and we're gonna intersperse the introductions, so I'm gonna continue the teaching. So now in text number 1 in the worksheet, in a handout, in a workout, and in a hand sheet, in a worksheet and in the handout. So we see. Would anyone like to read that? Maybe Yehudit, you have it?
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. The Shekinah is called Tamar, as it states in the Zohar. Tamar is male and female. Therefore, she is called Tamar in the name of the Shekinah that influences the upper world.
Therefore, she's called Tamar in the name of the date, no?
It says in the name of the Shekinah here.
Oh, okay.
That influences the upper worlds with good deeds of Israel, and afterwards it receives the influence from the upper world and influences Israel. Thus it is called Tamar, for it is both male and female, for it is both influences the upper worlds and receives influence for Israel. Naomi Elimelech.
So I have to explain that. That's like a very deep concept. So first of all, in botany, most trees are both male and female on the same tree, but the tamar, the date palm, has division between the female and the male trees, and that's like special and unique for the. And then it explains here in Normal Element, it's a Hasidic Kabbalistic concept that the Shekhinah has a dual relationship with us. It has, in Kabbalah, the masculine is to influence and the feminine is to receive. Both are equally important because that brings us the flow, and the movement of things, of things growing and happening. You need both. So Shekhinah brings influences to Israel, that brings us the divine indwelling presence that's giving us holiness, that's bringing us rain, all the things that come from above. But at the same time, it's receiving from Israel all our tefillot, all our prayers, all our mitzvot, all our good deeds. And that brings, and all what we, all the resonance of all the good that we're doing below, it actually reflects and has an influence on above. And it becomes a circle between receiving and giving. All what we enact that the Shekhinah receives, it in return influences what then the Shekhinah can bring down for us. So the Shekhinah is in between influencing and receiving. It does both. And that's what it says about Tamar. It's called that, which is interesting because, yes, I'm going to get to you very soon. Menucha, I want to finish explaining it. So what I think it means here is, the feminine role is a receiver. In relationship to the male, to the husband, to the rabbis, we're supposed to receive. And we're supposed to listen and obey and receive. But then there is also, that's the predominantly female character trait. But that's not all about what women are all about. Women have both female and masculine character trait, and we see that encapsulated in Tamar. That in one way she's receiving, she's waiting now as a live widow. She has 2 husbands died, and she's waiting for the third son of Yehuda to be given, that she should be given to him as a wife, because that is the tradition, that's the way, it's a mitzvah in the Torah, that the brother of the deceased husband marries the widow of the deceased brother to raise up children for him. So she cannot marry anyone else, so she's waiting to marry Shelah. So that's in a female role. But she's waiting enough time and she sees nothing is moving. And we understand that Yehuda is reluctant because she had 3 sons altogether. 2 of them married Tamar and then quickly after died. So he was concerned there's maybe something, he doesn't know why they died. It's like the private life. Tamar isn't going to tell her father-in-law why they died, what they did in their, their bedroom manners. That's something very private. So he doesn't know. He thinks maybe it's something, a spiritual thing with Tamar, and he's really reluctant to give his last son. So he's waiting. And but Tamar gets tired of waiting, and she gets into her masculine role of influencing, of making things happen, of making sure that Mashiach the beginning of the Messianic root can be born. And that's what she cares about, not about herself. And she has Ruach HaKodesh and prophecy, and she knows that the father of the child that she's supposed to bring forth from the Davidic dynasty is no other than Yehuda. And so she takes action, and she goes and she sits in the crossroad in a masculine role of influences things to happen. So that's how I understand the text number 1, why, which is also explaining her name, Tamar, that's both masculine and feminine, and that she has both. And we can learn from that too as women, that there is times to be receivers and there is times to be influencers. And it's not black and white, and we have to use our intuition to know in when to be in which role. Okay, Menucha, go for it.
Yeah, this is something that I've been considering, and I want to get your take on it. In Petach Eliyahu, it says that there's a pasuk that when the earth makes a keli for the rain, that just the act of receiving is giving it, is giving. It's giving the rain a keli. So what I'm asking is that in this idea of male and female, yes, at times we have to be more giving and more receiving, but it seems to me in these days, we almost have to do both at the same time. And I'm wondering what your take is on that. If as we move towards some kind of continuum conceptually or in reality, do we have to hold those more at the same time as women, as men, just as humans in bodies in this time? Because I myself am finding it that these roles are not always so clearly giving and receiving, that this act sometimes of receiving is giving and of giving is receiving, and it's not, the differentiation is seemingly becoming less, and also more difficult.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot, I agree with you. There's a lot demanded of us in the time of the pre-redemption time. And you're right that giving and receiving is relative. And like, for example, if you receive tzedakah from someone, you're giving them an opportunity to give tzedakah. So it depends how you look at it. So you can't really know. And that's why it's not so clear what our roles are. We have, it depends in relationship to who.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you that we have to do.
You do.
We have to do both. But we have to use our intuition and ask Hashem for help to know exactly how to be the best givers and the best receivers that we can be. But we need both, and you can't say a one thing that's like, there's not one rule about it. It's very individualized. But all it is to know that we're not limited to one or the other.
So the Shekhinah is not necessarily just a feminine receptacle. In this case with Tamar, it's bringing to Israel and then also receiving from Israel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's like the going in between the higher worlds and the low and our world. Okay, so that's the Shekhinah, and that's Tamar, and Tamar is the Shekhinah, and we want to be the Shekhinah. So we have to. So there's, we want to be like Tamar in that way. In some ways, not we don't necessarily want to go out in a crossroad dressed up as a prostitute, seducing our father-in-law, but in some ways we want to be like Tamar. Okay, so now we're going to the new topic, Petach Einayim, the opening of the eyes. So it says, this is chapter 38, verse 5 to 4, verse 14. And it says, and she removed the garment of her widowhood from upon her, and she covered herself with a shawl, and she wrapped it, and she sat at Petach Einayim, which was on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had not been given to, that Shelah had grown, but she had not been given to him as a wife. So what is the significance of the place that she sits in? Petach Einayim, which means the opening of the eyes. Ibn Ezra says it's two well springs in the shape of an opening that was in this place. But the Midrash says, in text number 2, says something else. Maybe we'll have Esther Ruth read text number 2. I'm going to unmute you. Okay. You have it? Yes, you're no longer. Okay.
Rabbi Ema said, we have reviewed the entire Torah without finding a place called Pitak in Ayim. This is to teach that she set her eyes on an opening upon which all eyes are dependent, and said, "May be your will, Hashem, my God, that I will not leave this house empty-handed."
Okay, so we see that according to the Midrash, it is not a physical or geographical place, this Petach Einaim. It's a spiritual place. It's an allegory, for she's looking for an opening. Tamar is looking for an opening. How can I bring about the parents of Mashiach? And everything seems dark and closed for me. What can I do? I have to find an opening, because this place, Petach Einaim, is not a real physical place that exists. Okay, so in text number 3, something so interesting. Susan and Abby, do you want to read text number 3? I can unmute you.
Okay. Our rabbis learned out, in the doorway of Abraham our father, since all eyes look forward to see him.
Okay, so this is a really, really strange text. So they say here, and Rashi says, she is sitting in the doorway of Abraham. This opening of the eye is the doorway of Abraham. But why is it called the opening of the eye? Because all the eyes are looking forward to see him. And here we have a really big problem. Yeah, you're laughing. What are you laughing at? The cat? What?
Yes, I'm chuckling at the cat.
Yeah, well, we're not.
She likes to be included. she wants to be included.
Well, we have a rule in my school that babies are allowed, but only on the mother's lap, not like in a way that they're distractive.
Is she distracting? Do you want me to close her out?
I won't laugh at her anymore. She's so cute.
Well, can she be in one place?
No, you'll see how nasty she gets, but I can put her out. If she won't stay here, I'll let her go.
No, okay. Because a lot of these animals, they're like reincarnations, and they really want to learn Torah.
She does. I once had the Torah in my house because I was hosting something, and she sat on the table right next to the Torah and she started hissing at people when they came near it.
Wow.
She was like guarding the Torah. Everybody was amazed. They couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Never know. Someone's a Gilgal.
So she's here to learn. She laid down on my papers. She's ready.
Yeah, if she lays down, it's less distracting.
Yeah.
Tell her to lie a bit down.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going back to the opening of Abraham our father, which is something very strange. Is it true that all the eyes are looking to see Abraham our father? So there, in text number 4, the Ma'or V'Shemesh says you have to understand this a little bit deeper. Okay, well, maybe we'll read that. Who did not read until now? I think actually Menucha didn't read. Did you? Did you also put up your hand?
No, but I didn't print it out, so I have to leave the screen. I can read it. I can just get it from my other screen.
Okay.
Yeah, so Ma'or
and Shemesh.
Text 4.
Yes.
One must understand that we don't find that everyone looks forward to see the entrance of Avraham Avinu. We find that Avraham displayed Mesirat Nefesh to save Lot when he pursued the 5 kings. Why would he sacrifice himself for the sake of Lot, who turned away from God? The reason is that he saw with Ruach HaKodesh that from him came the soul of David and Mashiach. This is the explanation of the Midrash, that she sat at the entrance of Avraham Avinu, that she did the same as Avraham Avinu, who sacrificed his soul to bring down the soul of Mashiach into the world. For all the eyes are looking forward to see him.
Okay, so this is something very deep. I love it when the Hasidic commentaries explain Rashi. And so this is an example of that here. And saying, it's a little bit hard to understand Rashi. She was sitting in the doorway of Avraham Avinu. All the eyes are looking forward to see him. It's not exactly true. Everybody's all the time singing, we want Avraham and we don't want to wait. We don't really see that. People are all the time looking forward to see Avraham, especially. I mean, we wouldn't mind seeing him, but He's not singled out as the one we're waiting to look forward to see, but the Mashiach is. And so he makes the parallel and saying, she's sitting in the doorway of Avraham Avinu, that she's sitting in the doorway of, meaning she's going in the footsteps of Avraham Avinu. What was Avraham Avinu doing? Everything he was doing was to bring Mashiach. The reason why he risked his life to save Lot, because Lot was taken captive in the war between the 4 and the 5 kings, and the 4 kings were mighty. And he went and he won over those 4 kings. It was a miracle. Oh, and he only went into this war in order to rescue Lot. And why did he care so much to rescue Lot? Lot had just separated from him because he was looking for, he couldn't handle the spiritual level of Abraham. He was looking for greener pastures. He was looking to move to Sodom, to the place where they were not so righteous because of his ability to make money. Why would Abraham care so much? Why was it worth for Abraham to risk his life to save Lot? Okay, he's his nephew, but he went in not such good ways. He went off the derech, as we say. So the true reason is all the things that Abraham did for Lot. Of course, he's a good uncle, and Lot was an orphan, and he wanted to take care of him. He wanted to protect him. He wanted to save him. But there was an underlying reason that explains how much more than he went out of himself for Lot, because Lot had the sparks of Mashiach in him. Because we know that from Lot's daughters, Ruth was born from his oldest daughter, and Naamah, which became the wife of Shlomo, and the mother of Rechavam, through which also Mashiach is descended, was born from Lot's younger daughter. And all this Avraham understood prophetically, and Avraham knew that he had to save Lot in order to bring Mashiach. And this is who everyone's eyes looked forward to. And Tamar, went in the same way. And she risked herself and gave a lot. And what we say, Mesirut Nefesh, she gives over her soul for this. This is what she cares about. Okay, and we see in verse 14 that I read, because she saw that Shelah had grown, and that in Baal Turim says, there's 3 places it says that someone grew, Kikadal in Hebrew. It says here, he had grown, Shelah, and it says about Yitzchak that he grew very much, and it says about Eov, and his pain grew very much. So Baal Turim puts all these together and says, because she saw that Shelah had grown, her pain grew. But from that comes also that from this marriage, the kingdom of the house of David is going to grow as well. So she saw in Ruach HaKodesh also that Shelah was not suitable to bring Mashiach. And that's why she went to do what she did. And she did everything she did for the sake of heaven. And intentions are very, very important in the Torah. We can't even imagine how important intentions are. So I'm not saying that actions are not important, but actions are also, both of them are equally important in a way. Well, maybe actions are more important, but we tend to put more, to give more emphasis on actions, even though in Chassidut and in the Kabbalah it says, an action without intention is like a body without a soul. So we need both. Okay, you got a friend there. Hello, hello. You want to introduce?
Yeah, it's one of my neighbors, Sheila Taratut. And so she's going to listen in if it's okay.
Okay, welcome. What is your name, Sheila?
Sheila.
Okay, welcome, Sheila. Okay, so now, Ababanel says there's so many things that Hashem made everything come together for Tamar. Number 1, Shelah grown. Number 2, Yehuda's wife had passed away. And 3, Yehuda was consoled and he was going up to shear his sheep. He was in a good mood. And Ababanel says, he's a commentator from, I think, the 14th century, Spanish, as you can hear from his name. things which are intended for the sake of heaven, even if they seem distasteful in the public eye, are praiseworthy, and Hashem rewards them greatly. Therefore, Tamar's deed and Ruth's also are praised because of the good intention. And now we have a big question. Now we're moving to because she covered her face. And it's in verse 15. And Yehuda saw her, and he thought that she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. So the question is, when had she covered her face? And if you look at text number 6, maybe we won't even read it. You just tell me what you think it means. When did she cover her face? Maybe just paraphrase it. Anybody?
Did you say text number 6?
I'm sorry, text number 5. I apologize. Yes. And if you're not, is your hand up, Benucha? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
It's perpetually up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever went down.
No, I just, this idea of covering the eyes, and we just read about that the Einayim were open. So, I don't know, I'm learning Rabbi Nachman a little bit, and he talks about the tzaddik as being the giver of the eyes. So I'm seeing her, by Bereishit Rabbah's commentary on the eyes opening. So she, and Abraham was a tzaddik, so she's sitting by him and the eyes are open. And now in a sense, there's something about covering them, that something's going on that's not as
Okay, that's beautiful what you're saying. That it's similar to the giving and receiving, which the dialectic there. Now we have the dialectic of the opening and the closing, the opening and the covering. Some things has to be open and something has to be covered and concealed. And it's maybe specifically through the covering and through the concealment that we're able to make the openings in the places that we need to open them. And that's also something that actually we're going to talk about as we move to text number 6. But first, text number 5. It says, when was it that she had covered her face? That's the question. Was it now? Yes, Terry. Are you on?
Says, yeah, am I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It says in the text that she covered her face in the house of her father-in-law.
Right.
So that's interesting to me, because I always thought that it was when she was at the Crossroads.
Right. So there's different opinions about that.
Go ahead.
That's one view. That's the view in the Gemara, in the Talmud. And there's another view that actually Ramban brings, well, this is the way of prostitutes. They would cover their face so that no one, their relatives and their friends wouldn't see who they were when they stand outside on the street, and they're all covered. They're like wearing a veil. And then they go home and no one will say, oh, you were out there before, because they're covered. So there's different opinions. But if you think about it, if she was only covered now, how could it be that Yehuda wouldn't find out that it was his daughter-in-law? If he was used to her, because the way it was in the old time is a widow goes to her in-law's house when, like, her husband died, because she can't, it's not like today a woman lives in an apartment on her own or lives with another few women renting on their own. They go either to the parents' house or to the in-laws' house. And she was going to her in-laws' house because she was waiting for the next son to grow up. So she was living in his house. So you would expect that he would be quite familiar with her. And even if she was covered her face standing at the crossroad, but when he was intimate with her, inside of the tent, you can assume that the cover of the face would come off, and even if it was dark, you could assume that and somehow he would know who it was. Is someone that lived in his house for a while, So that's why the Talmud is saying she was extremely modest when she lived in her father-in-law's house, whether she was actually wearing a veil the entire time or whether she just really was extremely modest in all different ways, so that he never recognized who she was, and then they say, whoever, it's all in the Talmud, every daughter-in-law who is very modest in her father-in-law's house will merit to have kings and prophets come from her. It's something so important, like this modesty that brings majesty. It's almost the same word in English. Modesty leads to majesty. Like, this could be a book title. And so, because that's really what it does, because it's a refinement, like a majestic refinement of being modest rather than like it's a more lowly, like, I don't have anything against peasants or anything, but it's like a more, if you think about the nobility, would be more covered, whereas like the lowly peasants would be rolling up their sleeves and wearing shorts and, would be a less refined way of being is, and today it's so sad to see that people who should take on the role of nobility, they act like, I don't want to say something bad about peasants because I think it's really important to work the land, but I don't know what's the other word for someone unrefined. Yes, you did.
It was.
Oh, but go ahead.
It could be that she was keeping herself covered out of respect for her father, so that her father-in-law, so that nobody would be able to notice who she was and say that he was sleeping with his daughter-in-law.
Right. Well, that was found out afterwards. That was found out afterwards. But the whole time she was with in her father-in-law's house, she didn't maybe know then what she was going to do later. She kept modest anyway, not just because of what's going to happen after, because it's important to do that. It's important, I learned somewhere, I don't know the source for that, but that there is like some kind of hidden desire from the father-in-law for the daughter-in-law. Or maybe it's like something about him wanting to feel himself young or something, I'm not sure. But for that reason, that's like a really important, strong reason for a daughter-in-law to always conduct herself with extra modesty in the house of the in-laws. Yes, Menucha, go ahead.
So when Yehuda says to Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up, and it says she went and lived in her father's house, is it conclusive that it was her father or her father-in-law?
Okay,
where was she? So there's a machlochet.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe she went back to her father's house, but then how do we understand text number 5? Which pasuk were you reading from?
Yud Aleph.
Okay, let me just check. Okay, let's, keep in mind that a father-in-law is also called a father.
So that's what it seems like, yeah.
But there could be different, as I said before, the widow would go either to her father or her in-law's house.
Mm-hmm.
Her father or her father-in-law. It's really not clear. It seems from the pasuk that she went to her real father, because it says she went. Like if she's gonna stay with Yehuda, she doesn't have to say that she went. Okay, so maybe it means that when she was married to the sons of Yehuda, they would stay in the same house, like it used to be in the old days. Mm-hmm. Like it's a big house and they had part of the house, and she lived in the same house as when she was married, because it's a little expensive to get your own apartment. It's not, in the old days, it was often many generations would live in the same house. And it seems like from what you bring to our attention that she did go back to her own biological father. So I agree with you on that. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. So now we're going to talk some more about the dichotomy of modesty and immodesty, like covering and opening. And so this is also connected to text number 6, and it talks about the tzniut, the modesty of the Persians. Now, because the other, other nations also have modesty. For example, I'm teaching now in my school, Be'erot, the Megillat Esther, the book of Esther, as Purim is around the corner. And so it was just Purim Katan yesterday. I was like, my husband's going, oh, I have to say Shir HaMalot. I said, what holiday is it now? He says, oh, it's a holiday, yes. Oh, yeah, Purim Katan. It's a special holiday, too. So in any case, so we learn that Vashti made a party for the women, and in a separate room from Achashverosh, who made a party for the men. But they say that it was really, really immodest of her, because her party was in a room next to the men's party, and it should have been in a complete different house. So you could see like how that was the natural modesty of the Persians, that they thought it was immodest to have a party, separate party, but next door, a men and a women's party next door to each other. That was considered for the Persians in that time. I'm keeping in mind they also got drunk, and there maybe were hallways that people could meet in, that it was considered immodest. And so we see in text number 6 that they talk about the Persians having modesty. Another modesty was the modesty of Achashverosh, the relative modesty, that when he was trying out a new woman to be a queen, it says be'erev hiba u'beboker hishava. In the evening she comes to his room, and in the morning she goes back. What is so modest about that? You want to say, Esther?
So no one would see her coming and going?
Okay, interesting. I didn't even think about it like that. I thought the modest part was that they would only have intimacy at night and not in the day.
It's dark, right?
And
it's dark.
And also that, and also it's like that's the modest recommended way in Judaism as well, And so, but he wants to say that the modesty of the person is only skin deep. This is from Rav Tzadok Lublin. Okay, so because that tznius was only external, their modesty was only external, but on the inside, there's no people who raised the Amalek people as much as the Persians, as we know. There's no people like, the empire of Achashverosh, who gave so much power to a descendants of Amalek, Haman. There's no one else who did that. So that modesty is just like an outer shell covering for a lot of evil and support of, and, empowering of. Wow, I'm getting thirsty from everyone drinking here. And so that's what he's saying here, Rav Tzadok. There's no other kingdom that raised the seed of Amalek so much. They are compared in the aspect, and none of them are revealed now. Only in the future Hashem will reveal them. They're connected, They're connected to Amalek. They're Amalek in deed and Persia and inner intention. That's interesting. Like they're connected. They're good and evil together. They have some modesty, but they have so much inner evil in these people. And so this is the character trait of tzniut, which is hidden, and the opposite is revealed. Okay, so what does it mean? Okay, so basically I'm going to try to explain it in my own words, this whole thing. Modesty is something relative to. You cannot have modesty, there's no value in the Torah that is ultimate and only. And because everything in the Torah is a tree of life, it's vital, it's dynamic. Certain values have to bend for other values. So there's no value that's black and white. This is it, that's the only, no matter what, you have to keep this. So also with tzniut, even though tzniut, modesty, is a very important character, not just for women, also men are praised with that. But sometimes it's not, is this value has to bend for another value. You cannot use modesty as a way, use it against serving Hashem. And so there's an example of that in the Tanac when David celebrated the return of the ark to Jerusalem. It had been taken captive, I think it was 7 years, by the Plishtim and the Philistines. And finally, they were able to bring it back home to Jerusalem. And David, and as I said, modesty is not just for women, it's also for men. And the greater and the more noble a person is, the more modesty is required. And he was the king. So he's suspected to act in a kind of covered way and not expose himself unnecessarily. And so what happened, what did he do when they brought in the ark? He went crazy, like he was doing breakdancing. You know, he was like so happy for the ark. And then it says that Michal, his wife, the Michal from the house of Shaul, she was the daughter of Shaul, she was the wife of David. David won her when he overcame Goliath, and he earned her with 100 Philistine foreskins, right? So he earned the daughter of the king. No, this is all in the book of Shmuel. Anyway, so she looked from the window and she looked down at David and she said, how despicable has this king like exposed himself in front of all the maidservants of his people. And she derided him in the way he was, also the way he was not dressed properly for a king, and he was dancing in a very wild and crazy way, exposing himself, not looking dignified. She was basically accusing him for being immodest. And here is an example of when it's not right to require modesty, because this was for the sake of Hashem, of celebrating for Hashem, and that the return of the ark, and that was and that thankfulness to Hashem overrides that kind of tzniut that Michal demanded of her husband. And it says like she was actually punished for that, and that she didn't have any children. This is all written in the book of Shmuel. So then tzniut is very, very important, and through tzniut we have protection. We have protection to be protected from the nations trying to harm us, because this is also what I teach about Esther. Through her modesty, she's compared to the myrtle, the hadassah, which the leaves covers the stem. Through that modesty, it's also a protection. It's a protection for that plant, that the leaves covers the stem. It's not so vulnerable to the elements and the weather. And so Esther was able to survive in that decadent, perverse castle of Achashverosh because of her modesty, and it's very important. But then when it came to the time when Esther had to go in front of the king to plead for her people, she had to break the rules of modesty. It was not considered modesty that a woman would come before her husband without being called in those times and in those places. So she broke the rules of modesty in order to save the Jewish people. So this is what Rav Tzadok says. He says, because Tamar was modest in the house of her father-in-law, kings and prophets came forth from her. When was this revealed, that kings and prophets would come forth from her? Because of her modesty? When she was sitting in a crossroad dressed up as a prostitute. That's when this was revealed. That's when we learn it, from verse number 14 or 15. I can't remember this moment. So what we learn from that is when you know when to be modest and when not to be modest, that's when your true modesty is revealed, when you know the boundaries and when to go beyond the modesty that because of a value that of serving Hashem is higher. That's when your true modesty is revealed. And this is also explaining that why it was Tamar that could sit at the crossroad like this, dressed up as a prostitute, something that's really opposed to modesty. It's the same reason why Yaakov, who is called the man of truth, could be the one who tricked his father, because he has the innate truth. That's who he is. That's his personality. in order to prove that when he's truthful, he's truly truthful for the sake of Hashem, not just because it's an inborn native quality that he has, but because he earns it through free choice by knowing when to be truthful and when to cross the boundary of the truthfulness for the sake of Hashem. The same thing is with Tamar. That's when it's revealed her true modesty. Yes, go ahead.
These were great people. I'm just wondering if it's not dangerous to think that we should even consider at any point being immodest.
Yeah, it's very dangerous. But who says we have to live a life don't take risk? No risks, no gain. It is dangerous, but I still think we have to be aware that there is such a thing. I can give you an example in my life. Okay, you can laugh at it because maybe the thing that to me seemed immodest that I did for the sake of doing the right thing may not seem so immodest to some other people. Well, there's a lot of things. Okay, I do a lot of things that is relatively immodest that I believe is what Hashem wants. Okay, first of all, I go on my annual tours as a woman alone, not with her husband, and I give speeches mainly to women, but still, like I'm going out of my house and I'm traveling and, on my own in all these places. And sometimes husbands pick me up from airports if the wife's busy or, whatever it is. Like I'm out there in the world, out of my four doors. So that's something relatively immodest. Well, when I started doing it, no other women were doing it. Now a lot of women are doing it. But then it was kind of a trailblazer because I've been doing it almost 20 years. It's not, I'm already tired of it. But I do it because I do it because I believe it's the right thing. It's what Hashem wants. It's how I can keep my midrashah flowing and also spread the Torah of Eretz Yisrael to the world. And I'm not taking credit for that, but Baruch Hashem, a lot of the women that I've been speaking and been close with in outside of Israel have made aliyah, and now Mata is one of them. I mean, in Menucha, I'm not taking credit for that, but like I'm sure there is. You can hear you. What?
I made aliyah in 1990.
Before you met
almost 30 years ago. So I'm returning now. We lived there. I don't know if you remember. We lived there twice.
Yeah, I know that. I know, but I mean, when I say make aliyah, I don't mean to take.
It is an aliyah anyway, isn't it?
Really? What I mean is where you live permanently, not like what it says on your passport or if you have a Teudat Zehut or not.
But isn't it somehow making even when you visit, isn't it, every time a person comes from Chutz La'aretz to Israel, isn't it a type of aliyah?
Yes, but there's more permanent ones.
Right.
Okay, for sure. So in any case, but I'm just saying, I know that that's one thing I have to do. And maybe it's not just to bring money to the school. Maybe it's much more because to spread the light of Israel to the world, and just Hashem makes it that way that all the yeshivas need money, so that because otherwise, the rabbis and rebbitzins wouldn't go out to the world if we had everything we needed. So Hashem is just making it that way because He needs us out there. Hi Barbara. I was wondering where you were. Okay, you look so full of light and beautiful. Anyway, so that's one thing. Another thing that I do that's not sneers, just to bring it down, what we're talking about. Well, one thing that I did one time was also in America. Well, it was, I was at a bar mitzvah or something like that in a synagogue. And it was an Orthodox synagogue and everything was Orthodox, but it was a little bit more modern than what I was used to in Israel, meaning that there was separate dancing between men and women, but there were not a mechitza. So women were dancing in one circle and men were dancing in another circle. So I didn't want to dance because there was not a mechitza. And then the Rebbetzin was dancing, a very frum woman. And I asked my husband, what should I do? And he said, you should dance. because you shouldn't make yourself more frum than the Rebbitzin, and this is, I wasn't going to dance breakdancing or any of my craziness, but, walking around in a circle. So these are little examples. Normally I would not do that, but it's also to increase the simcha of the, of the family who's celebrating, to not be like overly frum, and like not to always be a little frumpy. Okay, so for me that was like, it was a boundary breaker. I was out of my comfort zone to dance in an exposed way like that. For me, I know, like, for a lot of people that's what they're used to, so it's all relative. Okay, well, I'm not saying like we should do like things that are actually truly against the halacha in tzniut for, in order to make some kind of Kabbalistic rectifications and bring Mashiach. That is what you were worried about, right? So that I'm not saying, but in small ways in our life, we have to make decisions. We have to know that there is this principle that nothing is black and white. And in order to really prove that we mastered a certain meter, we have to also be willing to compromise with our principles for the sake of something that's greater than. I think we exhausted that. We don't have a lot of time. We can't do the creative exercise. I'm sorry. So we have a question. How could Yehuda transgress? There should not be a prostitute. That's in Deuteronomy 23:28. And how could it be that Yehuda, who was a great holy man, went with what he thought was a prostitute? And so they say that there's a few answers to it. And now I'm going to have to not take questions. I see I only have like 13 minutes left, and I have a lot more to teach. So they say that he also had to look at, there's two negative things. If he didn't go the prostitute, he may waste seed, which is a very big sin in the Torah. And so it would be less of a sin to go with a prostitute. Another explanation is, if you see the Hebrew word that's describing how Yehuda went to her in a way, it says, Veyet aleha el haderech, and he turned towards her on the way. And so this is something that I don't want any other man to say, and that can be misused as an excuse. But in this case, it was true with Yehuda. The Midrash says that he wanted to pass on. He didn't want to go to a prostitute. But then an angel made him turn back. And this is hinted to because to answer your question to the question here from Esther Ruth is how could it be wasting seed? Because if he wasn't gonna be with a woman, he may be spilling seed because he's been alone for a long time. His wife had died. He saw a beautiful woman that he felt attraction for. So it's better to be with that. That was the sin of his two sons that he didn't maybe know, but this is a very, very serious sin for a man to waste seed, and it's better to be with a prostitute in that case. But now I want to, not answering you? You don't like the answer? I'm not saying that a person should be with a prostitute, okay? A man should be married, That's and a man is not really supposed to be alone. It's really important for a man to marry, and if he's so you're saying that maybe he would try to please him? No, it could happen automatically by itself. He wouldn't. That happens a lot, unfortunately, to men. That's that it just happens in a dream, or something. So he knew he needed to be with that Tamar. He also understood that because he was such a holy person, that he had such a strong desire to be with her, that there was some reason why he had, that it was from Hashem. It wasn't normal. It wasn't like how he normally would feel. And he knew that it was something totally from God. And now, so I'm going back to what I was saying. Like it says, accidents don't happen to tzaddikim. There has to be a reason for it, for why he feels that way. But It was an angel that turned him, says the Midrash. And now then she tells him, Ma titenli. Well, what will you give me? Because she says, please, can I come to you? And she says, what will you give me? But the word ma is also a code word. Ma is the numerical value of 45. Mem is 40. Hey is 5. That's the gematria of Adam. Aleph, Dalet, Mem is also 45. And Adam is the acronym of Adam, David, and Mashiach. Like, you're going to give me Mashiach, so we can understand it like in a deeper way, not as a question, but as a statement. You're going to give me Adam, David, and Mashiach. You're going to give me Ma. And the word Ma is known in Kabbalah to it's a certain way that you spell out the name of God. It also becomes 45. If you spell it Yud, Vav, Dalet, Hey, Aleph, Vav, Aleph, and Hey, Aleph, all of them together spells out 45. And that name is the name, that way of spelling Yud, K, Vav, K, is the name that's called, that spelling of Ma, 45, is called Malchut, kingdom. So she's basically insinuating, you're going to give me kingdom. Excuse me. I'm sorry. So what about the pledge? So she's asking for, so she chooses the pledge. 3 very special and intimate things that belongs to Yehuda. What are they? The staff, the string, and the stamp. These are his very personal items. But really, these 3 things, they symbolize that really she's asking him to marry her. And really, because these 3 things correspond to what a husband has to give a wife in the ketubah, in a marriage contract. How is that? This is Rabbeinu Bachi explains. The stamp is the ona, is the intimacy, like is the circumcision. That's a stamp of the king. He has to give her. That's one of the 3 things a husband has to provide for his wife, is the times of intimacy. It's called ona, with a sign of the holy brit. The string is the clothing, that a man must provide his wife with clothes. And the staff is sustenance, with his, like food. He must support her with food. And that is, as it says in Vayikra 26:26, when I have broken the staff of your bread. Staff of bread, staff is support. Staff is support, and food is support. So these are the 3 things that a man obligates, takes upon himself to provide for his wife when he marries. So she was hinting to him, this is what you have to give me. And Gloria says each of the 3 things, they hint to the child that they're going to have together. The child is the father's stamp, because he ensures that the father's name will not be blotted out. And the string that comes out of his clothes is like a child that branched out of the father's body. And the child is also the father's staff, because the child is the support of the father in his old age. Okay, so another thing is that they all 3 things correspond to kingdom. Your string, your string, that's the Sanhedrin, who sits in judgment, wrapped in talit and tzitzit. And the staff, that was like the staff that was in Moshe's and Aaron's hand. And that's through which, that's the staff that also the Mashiach is going to have. Okay, so in other words, what's really happening here is that Tamar makes sure that really a hidden marriage is happening. This is not about a prostitute. It just looks like that on the outside, but that's really not what it is. Now, when later it was told to Yehuda that Tamar had done prostitution, and then he was his daughter-in-law, and that she was pregnant. And then it says Yehuda judged her to be burnt, which is very strange, because why would he judge her to be burnt? That's not the judgment for. That's not the punishment for being a prostitute. But that's, Rashi says, because she was the daughter of Shem, and Shem was a Kohen. And therefore, a Kohen is judged to, the daughter of a Kohen who does that is judged to be burned. Another possibility is just to burn a sign on her forehead. That was something they used to do like as a sign of degrading sign of a prostitute. Text number 7 is a very important Rashi. Well, she had his 3 intimate items. What could Tamar have done? He's making a proclamation, public proclamation, bring this Tamar to be burnt. Tamar can answer him back, well, wait a minute, and make a public proclamation. I'm pregnant with a man that these 3 things belong to, and show them. And it would be extremely embarrassing for Yehuda. And so it says in text number 7 in Rashi, she didn't want to embarrass his face and say, I'm pregnant from you, but rather from the person that these belong to. She said it, privately to him. If he would admit it on his own, good, and if not, I would rather be burned than embarrassing his face. And so from here we learn that a person should be rather willing to be burnt than to embarrass the face of his friend in public. Okay, so what's going on here? So there's a lot of deep things going on. And also, she said, recognize, please, hakerna. These are the same words that Yehuda said to Yaakov, by the way, when he had given the Yosef cloak dipped in blood to Yaakov and said, hakerna, recognize, isn't that your son's cloak? So everything comes back to him. Everything a person does comes back to him. Now she's saying, hakerna, recognize, and don't destroy 3 souls. And from here we see she was a prophetess. I mean, this is in Rashi, don't destroy 3 souls. She knew she was going to have twins. And this is something very deep, Zerach and Peretz, because they correspond to the sun and the moon. Zerach means to shine, and Peretz means like a little piece, like the moon, which only like a piece of it is illuminated, and it keeps being a different kind of slice. Prutza means a slice. Peretz is the lack of light in the end of months, and Serach is the light in the beginning of the months. In the future, these 2 will be one. Like when the time of the Mashiach, Zerach and Peretz will be like one. The sun and the moon will be one. The man and the female and the male will be one. Like the giving and receiving will be one. The covering and the uncovering will all be like one. It will be some greater entity that includes all of it. It will be a time when everything will be complete light. Like it says in Yeshayahu, for your light comes and the honor of Hashem upon it will shine. And then there won't be any diminishment between these 2 sons that she was going to have. And interesting enough that the gematria, the numerical value of Tamar's name is 640, which is also the numerical value of Shemesh, the sun, the light giver, Shemesh. 300, 2 shins, that 300 each, that's 60, and the mem is 40, 640. Okay, so, and this is what Tamar is about, and this is what kingdom is about. It is about the light that comes, but the light that is first hidden. So now we have to go towards the end, and there's a few things. So, wow, I'm going to have to go a tiny bit over time. But one thing is that Tamar was willing to risk her life by not privately telling Yehuda, look at these 3 items here. This is it. You're the father here, so let's just like work something out, and don't burn me, and I won't say anything. Right, that's called blackmailing or something. So she understood she had to risk her life and not say, but like just show him the things, and he has to decide if he wants to admit or not admit. And that was a big risk because men don't like to admit their mistakes, and especially men in leadership. That's just how things work. The greater a leader is, the harder it is for them to apologize. That's my experience. In any case, it's very hard for men to apologize, much harder than for women. But she took the risk because she understood this is based on Rav Eliyahu Kitov, that in order for the Mashiach to come through this union between Tamar and Yehuda, both of them have to be willing to go through a rectification, make an act of tikkun rectification. Yehuda had to be willing to publicly admit, and that's a big thing for someone like Yehuda, and not an easy thing. And Tamar had to be willing to risk her life. And there were two equally difficult things. If they were willing to do that, both of them, then they would marry, then they will earn the ability to be the parents of Mashiach. And she figured, if that's not going to happen, then I don't really have a purpose in life. All my life is to bring Mashiach. So then I may as well, be burnt, because if I can't be the mother of Mashiach, that's all I care about. Therefore, she was willing to lose everything. So, and in the end, Yehuda, and this is the greatness of Yehuda, but he could only become that greatness that we know him for, the Baal Tshuva, the one who recognized, the one who is willing to cause his own embarrassment. He could only become who he was because Tamar gave him that opportunity. And then he recognizes, and he says in verse number 26, Vayaker Yehuda recognized, Vayomer, and he said, Tzadka mimeni, she is more righteous than me. Because I hadn't given her to Shelah, Bini, my son, or she's more righteous than me because I should have given her to Shelah and I didn't. I was afraid. And she's more righteous than me, so that's why I didn't give her to Shelah, because Shelah is not worthy of her, because Shelah is not as righteous as me, and she's even more righteous than me, so she wouldn't be suitable. Shelah wouldn't be suitable for her. That's another explanation of some of the commentary. So there's a few ways we can understand what Yehuda said. Rashi in text number 8, I think he gives us 3 possibilities. Yehuda says, Tzadka hi mimeni, Tzadka hi mimeni. So in a simple meaning, she's more righteous than me. But Rashi breaks it up. Tzadka, she's righteous in her words. Mimeni, from me is she pregnant. So that's a second explanation. And then our rabbis learned out that a bat kol, a heavenly voice, came down and says, Mimeni, Hashem is saying it's from me. Like when somebody very holy has to be brought into the world, the ancestor of the Mashiach, it can be from no one but me. It can't be from 2 regular people getting married in a regular way. It has to come about in a very strange and crooked, twisted way, because nobody should be able to claim, oh, I am the father, I brought this about. It's like something so unexpected from like this relationship on the street with a prostitute, with a man that didn't even know who he was with. It is something so not unexpected. And this is how everything in the Messianic lineage takes place, from the daughters of Lot all the way back to the daughters of Lot that lived with their father, incest, when he was drunk, with Tamar, the story of Tamar, also the story of Yaakov and Leah when he thought it was Rachel until the morning he didn't know, and also, of course, the story with Ruth and Boaz. All of these stories are like how to bringing the Mashiach. Is all of them are not bringing the Mashiach in a straight way. It's all like in a strange, underhanded way. And so the Chafetz Chaim explains that there is no other advice than to make the way crooked, and this is in text number 9, and to appease the Satan, because in a straight way, the way of the Torah, that Satan would have accused, and the thing would have not been carried into action. This is the only way to make these holy things happen in a world in a way that seems unholy on the outside, because then you get rid of the accusing forces. You trick the accusing forces. They will not bother because they don't think that anything holy is going to come out of that. Okay, and so this is also what I want to end with, that we could say that is the Petach Einayim, the opening of the eyes that Tamar saw. That she saw that in order to bring Mashiach, this is the only way, this is the only opening, even though it doesn't look so nice. It's not the straight way, but this is the only opening for Mashiach to be born. And so So this is what it says in the Talmud. Through the thing by which they destroyed is the tikkun. Tov ma'od, very good, is the Yetzer Hara. Through the Yetzer Hara, the main tikkun is made. How is the main tikkun made? I forgot to also say Bathsheba and David. It's also part of the Messianic dynasty. Yes, all the Messianic dynasty comes about by women taking initiative in sexual matters in a way that doesn't really seem very holy, but that on the inside the intentions are so holy. And that is like, whereas the men, the role of the men is to overcome their Yetzer Hara. The role of the women is to use the Yetzer Hara, to imply it for the sake of bringing children into the world, for the sake of bringing holy souls into the world. And I think I see that Menucha again has a hand up. Go ahead. Go ahead. Wait, we can't hear you.
Tamar was the daughter of Elam, who was the daughter of Shem. And Shem was the son of Noach. And Yehuda, she was a lot older than him.
Well, no, because Shem became
generations.
Shem became more than 1,000 years. Okay, so Shem lived for 10 generations. Shem was alive when Abraham was alive, also.
Right. So,
but yes, it's not really making sense. I hear what you're saying. It's a good question, but he could have had it could be one of her. It was his granddaughter, in other words.
Whose granddaughter?
Shem's, right?
No, Shem. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it could have been from one of his latest wives, and like it could have been in his 1,000th year. Okay. Anyway, we can't know these. These are things that are okay.
Crazy. Yeah, just when you said the daughter of, from Shem, that's like way back from Yaakov and Yehuda.
But maybe she was from the dynasty of Shem. In any case.
To look into it. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
In any case, so just to paraphrase, the main thing of Tamar is her action was for the sake of heaven. She had tzniut in the right place. She had zrizut. She had the good way. She knew when to act, and she acted in the right timing. She had wisdom to grab the right moment. She had courage, like a lioness, to be willing to risk her life. And that goes together with Mesirut Nefesh. She was willing to be burnt rather than embarrassing Yehuda. She trusted 100% in Hashem, and knew if she was right and carried the sprout of Mashiach, then Hashem would save her and her offspring. Okay, and so we find that the righteous women are praised for taking initiative in sexual manner. Leah, in a certain sense, and the women that redeemed us from Egypt, Ruth and Tamar. So we're going to end with that for today. We went a bit over time, and I actually have a client, so I really have to end now. It's really nice to see you. Please, everybody, try to come in time. I know there were some of you really came way in time. So, Litraot, have a really good evening. It's wonderful to learn with you. And we'll have more introductions next time, some of the new people. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Shavua tov.
Shavua tov. Bye-bye.